So, want to welcome everyone to Coffee with Rob. Now, Rob, I've got my Focus on the Family mug. That cost me $60 at an auction.
Great.
For support of Focus, and I'm drinking Balzac coffee.
Well, nice. Okay, so this is 99 cents, this cup from the dollar store, and I'm drinking President's Choice because we go through it so we go through a lot of it, but it's not pre-ground coffee.
It's not, well, that's the bonus. Got
so
some good things.
That's the secret to cheap coffee.
All right. Now we've got people joining us. How many people do we have joining us right now? I've got Renee here with me.
At the moment, we've got 4.
Okay, we've got 4 who are joining us, and some more will be joining.
Morning, folks.
Want to welcome people from Simcoe side. And the goal here this morning in Coffee with Rob is get to know him a little bit. Normally, we would have had Rob and Beck back this week at church. You would have gotten a chance to meet him, chat with him, hear him preach in person, see his lovely face. And but we have to do it all online now.
Yeah.
So while this is not ideal situation, I think we're proving that we can connect, we can still do what we need to do in God's kingdom, even in the current situations. So we're going to start off with some conversation with Rob, and chime in, enter into your comment section if you have questions or comments. Renee is monitoring all of that, and she's going to pass questions on to me. And we're going to just kind of dive into it. Sure. And see what we can get to know about Rob. So, sure. Rob, I know you've sensed, and I use the word calling loosely.
Sure. Yeah.
You sensed a calling into ministry for quite a while now, and you went into training, and God led you into ministry. Tell us about where God led you for training and the places that you've been in ministry, some of the things that you've done.
Sure, yeah. So Beck and I, we went to Emmanuel Bible College, which is in Kitchener. It was connected to an EMCC, the denomination. So yes. Beck's dad, pastor. We actually didn't ever set out to be, both of us, in ministry. I went to theater school. We wanted to be creative artists living the downtown Toronto life, but faith was real for us. And so we went to a church actually called the Stone Church, which was downtown Toronto, a POC church. So you're going to hear that we have been connected with multiple faith gatherings, which I believe is a good strength.
That's an awesome thing. It gives you a very broad perspective of the faith traditions.
Yeah, right. Unless you're in that tradition and people just want you to be locked into that tradition.
Yes.
Because you ask why a lot.
Yeah.
So for us, ministry was more of an invitation through a leader. A guy named Don Noble said, "Hey, Rob, you're a Bible college grad. You've got some skills. Would you be a part of a team that's launching a service for York University?" Sorry. And that's sort of, he put his hand on me and said, "Let's go." At the time, I was moonlighting at the Keg Mansion, waiting tables, and sort of in that tension of I'm in one world and have some broken pieces of my life. I'm being invited to serve in ministry. And I remember making the decision, and it was a pretty dramatic moment. I believe I had a Holy Spirit encounter on the Bloor Danforth Bridge viaduct. And I remember saying, if this is real, God, then if I choose this path, then I'll probably self-destruct and life will be, I'll lose my marriage. And if I choose this path, and it shows you how I think, if I choose this path or this path, then I'm in. So immediately I said to the Holy Spirit, I'm in. Okay, I'll do this. And I felt, and I can talk sometime about the emotions connected to it and all that stuff. But I remember going home at like 2 a.m. and waking back up, and we joke about it. and which is she cried because I said, honey, I found what I'm supposed to do with my life. I'm going to be a pastor, not an actor. And she started crying because her dad was a pastor, and she knows that it's a, it's a
Yes.
life of humility and servitude. And
Yes.
um, it's a, well, we know it's a tough calling. And I do believe unless you really have um, a steely determination or a call, whatever you want to frame it as, let me tell you, it's a tough role to die to yourself daily and give your life
Yeah.
away.
Totally.
So that's kind of that was the calling to ministry. And then from there, we just, had opportunities to serve in churches and move around because, so let me give you a connection really quickly, Jerry. Because Stone Church was one of those early adopter churches, it
Yeah.
was really the beginning days of the Willow Creek, the seeker sensitive.
Yes.
And I'm an outreach thinking human being.
Yeah.
It was really attractive. They gave me my internship. I was mentored there, but they were outward focused early days. So I've never actually been in an inward focused church. I usually have always served in outward focus community, being in the world, set apart for the world. Kind of. I can keep going, but you can
Sure.
kind of.
Yeah. So
You need.
in your ministry, like in this calling,
Yeah.
I know you've served in a number of churches in a number of cities. Where are some of those places that you've served?
Sure. So Toronto, obviously, that's where Stone Church was. Kitchener, Waterloo. So that was, that's where our Bible college was. That's where Beck's parents were pastoring. So I served in Kitchener, Waterloo. We've served in Montreal. So in Kitchener, we were part of launching a church plant. So that's another part of my DNA to, we're pioneers by our spirit.
Yeah.
That's how God's crafted us. Montreal, we've been in Edmonton as well. So that's our Western connection, you and I.
That's right. That's where we met you guys.
Right. So, so we've had this experience to serve across Canada and see different style and personality. And it's been great. It's been, it's a transitional life at times, usually 3 to 5 years. And the nature of the type of roles that I served at were improvement roles, right? You come into a church, you help break ceilings, you help find what's the new momentum to move forward. But I felt called to ministry and pastoring, and one is a professional job in the church, which is different. So we feel like we're coming back to this season of shepherding.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks.
Now, let's just take a look at some of the questions. So we've got some questions posted on Facebook already.
Okay.
And so both Vanda and Margaret, and thank you, Vanda and Margaret, for giving us some questions. Both of them ask, why do you want to be the pastor at Simcoe Side?
Right. So we're, so Beck and I believe we're fiercely obedient people. Couple of things that we were praying about as we've been, looking for churches, and that we would have open-handed people that would say, hey, here's a resource. So if we had $1 billion, God might, he would never do that to me because I'm just not a great steward of $1 billion. I can't generate 10 billion from 1 billion. It's just not. But open-handed people that have already a space created within a community, so a home base, the opportunity to be ourselves and explore with sort of the mode of how to express ourselves in church. The DNA behind Simcoe Side, which is loving of music. There's a deep sense of the value of performance and music, which is really a creative spirit. So we're creative people. We want to be connected with creative people, high rules people. And Team Abbott, we don't connect well. And I don't see that in Simcoe Side. And so really we were looking for something that needs a new day. Had a great day, God's honored it,
Yes.
but we're ready
Yeah.
for a new day. And that's
Yeah.
part of who we are, pioneers, helping
Oh,
discover new days.
yes.
And I really love to, I remember one conversation with Scott where I thought, oh, he talked about how the leadership went down to some large church, and I thought, oh wow, that's super entrepreneurial for the
Yes.
community of faith to step out and do something different,
Yes. Yes.
and learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. And I just want to affirm that what we've seen in our leadership,
well,
guys who are very humble and very open,
mm,
but are looking for a new direction of life for the church.
great.
And they've come through a season of growth after some real tragedies, but now we've hit COVID, and which has some real challenges. And now, as we're hoping, as fall comes on, that there will be a new level of openness and a new opportunity to do some good things. And I think someone with creativity
Yeah,
and who can work with the church and direct the church
yeah,
in a new direction of life and outreach and things is so important. So
yeah.
important. So thanks for answering that question. We've got
Well,
some
thanks
other
for
questions coming up.
get a thumbs up from them on the Facebook. Did they go,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's a good answer"?
sweet, yes. Okay, here's one from M. And M, thanks for giving us a question. I'm hoping I can get this right.
Okay.
Hoping I can read my writing here. Um, how do you feel like you connect to all walks of life? Young people, young families, middle age, older folks. That whole thought of connecting broadly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an interesting question. Maybe I'm not self-aware, but I have always felt that God has He's crafted me so that I'm able to relate to certain people. So communicators are able to really great communicators are able to find how people communicate and change really quickly.
Uh-huh.
Part of my personality, I'm able to understand the values of people. So
Ah,
and it can get kind of deep, but you understand human motivation. So it's part of
mm,
learning, it's part of leadership capacity. Uh, but I
yeah.
also believe that I'm a middle of the road guy. I'm
Mm,
not a radical artist, so I kind of joke and say I'm not really a patchouli stink artist. So artists are kind of like, I think he's a manager. He's not really an artist. Managers are like, I think he's an artist. He's not really a, creative. Uh, I, I actually believe that part of what God has given me is the spiritual gift of leadership, and that is not seeker target type of people. It is just leading. So my experience, having led in large churches, those large churches get large because of a certain style of personality. You learn to be in relationship, but
yeah.
yet at the same time, my heart would be to walk down the street and build a relationship with somebody who's sitting on the corner side, with a smoke that says, hey, can you talk or help me or whatever it is. So because we believe that people are so important, Genesis 1:26-27,
Yeah.
it is part of my DNA that all people are treated with dignity.
Yeah.
That's one. The other posture, um, I'm a lifelong learner, so I can learn from anyone. And
Yeah.
if you approach people in that posture of humility, that's how you connect. So
Yes.
it's not so much, how you dress, what you look like, even how you speak, even though I think that's important. Um, it's loving people. I know that sounds kind of
Yeah.
soft and mellowy, but
Yeah.
you probably agree.
Totally. And I think compassion
Yeah,
and interest in listening to people that transcends
yeah,
all age groups and all things like that. So
yeah.
just a follow-up question with that. And Elaine asks this question: what are your thoughts towards children and youth ministries? And
Right.
and that's an area that Simcoe side has really struggled with. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a
while
gap. Yeah.
I've heard everyone say we want to reach out to more youth and more children. That's been a real struggle here.
Sure. Yeah.
And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts. Um, so two things when it comes to youth and children ministry, and I shared this with the leadership, and
Yeah.
I even believe with the search team, that youth is not so when you talk about church life and church momentum and church growth, youth is what they call a maintenance ministry. So you support, you care for, you kind of put a warm blanket around your students and you give them sort of life tools. That does not bring in new people to the church. It's not a gospel initiative usually, right? Most kids aren't going to be bringing their friends, even though we think they will, they don't, right?
Mhm.
Because it's just awkward and weird. Children is one of those, it is one of those things. Kids will come to your events, they'll bring mom and dad. So if I had to choose between where you put resource, even in the early days, even though I have two kids, so I
Yeah.
mentioned this, I have two teenager boys. I would still put it in children focus
Mm,
because that'll generate more. I
right.
believe that's so I've seen that in the mode of operation in
Yeah. Yeah.
different.
Interesting that you mentioned that. I'm not sure if you know this about me. For about 5 or 6 years, I was a children's pastor in a large church.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I loved it. I
Oh,
got to tell stories. I bring
great,
all the kids up front, do a do a
great,
Sunday, sermonette, and of
great,
course, kids ask the strangest things in public, so you
great,
had to be ready for everything. But
great.
what we found is that parents will want to go to church
Yeah,
where their kids
yeah,
want to be.
yeah,
And it was one of those areas of ministry of intake where parents came to know Jesus because of their
yeah,
kids. Yeah. So so what
yeah.
I hear you saying is that probably children's ministry, like while youth ministry is important, children's ministry is where you want to put a lot of resources because you reach the families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my heart would be though, and my observation would be that um, most of our churches are old. I'm old
Mm,
in our church in that my thinking, the things I care about, my nostalgia,
yeah.
it reflects a 50-year-old male. Um, so if I was to say anything in ministry, choose younger all the time. Choose younger,
Mm,
right? So I would flip the keys to students and say, just like you have done in worship, you bring in young people who they will express themselves differently.
yeah.
Like they just will. And I would call the church to continue to die to yourself
Yeah.
so that, that we have youth expressing.
And that's not easy for us older ones to
Oh, it's not easy for me.
to give that ministry to the
Right.
youth of our church. But like you say, when youth are ministering, at least I found it drives their faith in deeper in themselves,
Totally.
and
Right.
that ability to minister and serve is actually a growth spot for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
would fully agree with you. So I don't know if that answers the
Yeah.
full question.
Good. Let's take a look. We've got a couple questions here that are similar.
Okay.
Margaret asked this question: how do you feel about coming to a smaller community and a smaller church?
Yeah.
And Ruth asks this question: how do your boys feel about the move, the possible move coming up? So they're kind of close, but maybe you
Mhm.
can talk about that.
Yeah. So there's a book by Eugene Peterson called Working the Angles.
Ah,
Is
yes.
it has profoundly shaped me. So larger churches, in for better or for worse, operate as institutions, businesses. So much of what we do is, return on investment approach to ministry is key performance indicators. Like it's a metric system that you measure and move forward. And I don't think it's wrong to be a CEO. I don't think it's wrong to be like this leader. But what I'm recognizing, and our family's recognizing, the call to ministry
Mm,
um, is shepherding. It is spiritual guidance. So to have
mm,
those tools in our back, in our pockets, that's good. But for this season of my life, I believe God's saying, "Hey, you're a relational human being. Um, give yourself to relationship."
yeah.
So in the larger churches, relationship is usually a program we offer. It's not, and again, I'm not banging, like saying that that's negative.
Yes,
But
I
when
hear
I
you.
think about coming to a smaller church like Simcoe Side, I actually believe that it will grow. I believe, and I even said this, in my little sermonette that I offered that you guys will hear tomorrow, that our needs, Team Abbott, my family, like our needs, what we have, we'll meet up with what God has, the gifts that you're offering, the gifts that we're offering will meet up with your needs, Simcoe Side, and it will grow. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe that, not because I'm a skilled or gifted leader, because God fulfills the promises that he makes to people.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
he
so,
wants
yeah,
this church to grow.
yeah, and going from a large program-oriented church to
Mhm.
to a smaller church, smaller community, which is much more relational.
Right.
Of what I hear you saying is that in this season of life, that's where that's where your desire is to be, your passion to be more involved in that way. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's a good frame and good reframe.
Yeah.
The other things, Jerry, would be I have seen minimal transformation in our big churches. So
Ah,
minimal life change. And we actually believe that the gospel uh, is about people finding the new creation that God
mm,
has in them,
yeah,
that salvation and healing happens. And so we're hungry and desperate to be a part of seeing
yeah,
transformation in people's lives and in a community as well. Um, and big churches, they're not really innovative risk taking. They maintain the system, and we want to try things, and we want to be
yeah.
a community with people who try things.
Yes.
So our boys are ready. They have never enjoyed our large church ministries.
Huh.
They're relational. So it's
Yeah.
interesting when we were there. So we said, "Hey, what do you think? Like, was it
Yeah.
awkward? Was it not as professional as you were used to?" And they're like, "Dad, it was great." And they don't give you a lot, like
Sure.
even my
Sure.
kids. They don't
Yeah. You
give you
got
a
to
lot.
drag it out of them.
No, it was fantastic
Nice.
because they're relational kids. They would rather hang out. We spent a year or 2 years at a small church plant in a high school
Mm,
when we were in Oshawa in transition,
yeah.
and they loved it.
They love that.
They love their youth pastor from there. He's become our friend, and it was just really good music, great food, and really practical sort of life skill church, as opposed to this big production
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
church.
Now,
So
I think that that comes right up against a perspective that those of us who are in an older age bracket
right,
wrestle with, because I think in our mind we tend to think the bigger, the more professional, the more the program
yeah,
shines. That's what people want to have, and that's what people are attracted to, and that's the pull to attract them to church. And maybe at one time it was, and maybe even for us older
yeah,
people that still is,
yeah,
but a younger generation is
yeah,
looking at something different, aren't they?
yeah. So lights, big stage, hot slick band, that's actually traditional now. Like that's a model of 15, maybe 20, maybe even 25 years for some people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's tradition for a lot of people.
Yes.
So people are looking for an honest relationship, people who are honest. So so we use the word authentic. I actually think it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
Human beings that are vulnerable with other human beings who say, I actually really believe this stuff called Christianity and
Yeah.
faith. That's stupidly attractive. Um, sorry, I use words like that. um, stupidly attractive.
Stupidly
Like
attractive.
that's a negative.
Yeah.
Um, I also, let me just reframe my thoughts here and think through this.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that church, if you are living the gospel and not doing programmed church, because that's what the big show is,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
better and for worse. And within the big show, there is lots of real healthy church and real healthy community and outreach and, humility and serving. There is, but primarily the engine that drives that is the big show.
Yeah.
But I believe people want real relationship, and they want to know that you believe this stuff more
Yeah.
than anything, and that you're willing to put life and resource towards it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I'm glad to hear you say that. Here at Simcoe side, we did kind of a little evaluation a year ago before COVID hit, kind of thing. And there's a few things that stood out as to what draws people here and what keeps people here.
Yeah.
And overwhelmingly what came up is that they said the relationships, the people, the community.
Yeah.
And sometimes we trick ourselves to thinking that really, if we can put on a better show,
Right.
I don't want to use that sacrilegiously.
Yeah.
If we put on a better show on Sunday morning, our churches will fill up more and people will get what they need to change them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in defense, much of my ministry has been serving and helping build a better show. I think you can have, and I actually believe this,
Yeah.
you can have a good public worship service where it's honest, where you have a real connection with the living God of the universe. People experience his presence.
Yeah.
And it's good quality and still maintain vulnerability and I believe you can do both.
Yeah. Not an either or.
Right. But we tend to choose the show because actually I think it's less costly. It's just, it's less costly, right?
Yeah. Costly in regards to our, what it demands of us.
For sure.
Yeah. So connected with that, Vanda asked the question. This is about Vanda.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Vanda asks this question in regards to music ministry. She says, what do you see as a priority in the music ministry? And we've had some discussions. You've had some discussions about this with the leadership team.
Yeah. So, your leadership has said one of their goals and desires would be to have good leadership leading that, giving leadership. So when I say good leadership, it means probably teaching some of the skills of how do you lead worship? What is worship? So I would see that as a priority. I think also saying, well, what is the dream? What's the purpose? So just like everything, what's the intention behind why you're doing what you're doing would be, so that's kind of twofold for me.
Yeah. And finding that. Now, do you see yourself like going back to the traditional hymns, staying with the 1990s type of thing? Like how do you see taking all the different styles and genres of music? What do you do with all that?
So that's where you'll see my creativity. I'm not locked into a style, even though I have a preference of musical style. It's just who I am. So church worship music isn't about self-expression. It's about creating spaces for people to connect with the Father. So if you have,
I like that.
you have, and I'll use the word with much reverence and respect, Nana and Papa. So my Nana she would really have loved Salvation Army military style hymns.
Oh, yes.
So I don't see that as wrong, that it's wrong that you serve Nana, and give her a moment, because that's part of what we're doing. We're facilitating worship. We're not self-expressing as artists. On the flip side of that, you know, you could have a young um woman who says, man, Billie Eilish, like that's like great music. And why can't worship reflect that? Because it's just style.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not locked into styles. In fact, I love classical music. So I think people who say this is our personality of music are actually not creative people, or
Mm,
they run with blinders on in church.
right. Keep it
Because
narrow.
yeah, because nobody really lives like that. We're so eclectic and diverse, and
Yeah.
we reflect, you know, the creativity of God. So yeah, you could have classical music. You could have a beautiful cello at Easter. You could certainly have, you know, like a heavy um, distortion sound for, you know, you got students that want to drive it, but you also have bluegrass. Why not?
Yeah.
The other thing I would also say is intentionally reflect community that's
Mhm.
around you. So if we want to serve people's journey to faith, and we want to use things that are touch points, and this is where my program church comes in.
Yeah.
You know, what's happening in the area, in Aurelia, who's playing at the casino,
Yeah.
you know, are there connections? I just think that way.
Sure, sure. Now let's just take a breather here for a moment.
Sure.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Lead the
Just
way.
want to address a couple things. How many people do we have online with us?
Oh,
Um, Well, Renee's checking that out.
No, it's you and me, and it's good conversation.
Yeah. No, it's we're just checking out.
How do I know?
We know we've got a number of people here, and for those of you here, just want to remind you, we're having coffee with Rob. Rob is, yeah, he's almost done. And some of you just wanted to draw your attention to the process of pastoral search. And what we've done is our search committee started meeting back in November, or re-meeting, talking about the goals. And the goals of the search committee were to find the resumes and the people that are out there, and do some interviews and some connections with them, and boil that down out of that pool of people down to 3 or 4 top picks, I guess you could say, or the ones that were best suited, they thought, for here. So create that short list. Then they took that short list and passed it on to the leadership team, our board of elders. And then our board went and interviewed each one, talked about their philosophy of ministry, their theology, dug deeper into their lifestyle, their priorities, their, did I say theology? Talking, and some of these discussions were very detailed and long, and to dig below the surface and see who is really there that fits the DNA of Simcoe side. And from that, their goal, as has been always, to present one candidate to the church, the one that they thought, here is the best fit connected to our church. And so as the board did that, they found that Rob kind of rose above the rest, which is why the leadership team is presenting Rob as their recommended candidate. And then on Sunday, tomorrow, we're asking you guys to vote. Should we call Rob and Beck and their family to come to Aurelia to be part of Simcoe Sci, to be our pastor, to lead our congregation? And so while the search committee and while the leadership team have done all the heavy lifting, all the hard work of all this kind of stuff, and taken hours and hours into this, we still need your vote in order to make this pass. And we're asking for you guys to prayerfully consider Rob as our pastoral candidate. And we need you to vote. And we're asking you to send your vote to leadershipteam@simcoesci.com, or to call into the church office and leave a voice message. Normally, we'd be able to have you here, do it in person. It would all be, very traditional. The way things are these days, we have to do it non-traditionally and do it all, electronically.
Mhm.
So you have to vote from a distance. So we need your vote. We need it before 7 p.m. tomorrow night, because at 7 p.m. we're going to take a look at the votes. We're going to consider what is God been telling you as a congregation. And from that, we're going to decide next steps. So that's where we are in the process. And so we value your input. We value what you have to say. If you have any questions or concerns, leadership team at simcoeside.com. That's the email address that you can address your questions to. And that's where we are. And that's why we're having coffee with Rob this morning, so that you have a chance to get to know him a little bit more and see what God is stirring on your heart. So let's get back to our questions. And we want to follow up with what we were talking about with music ministry. And as you know, music is very important to people here at Simcoe Side. So Ruth and Margaret both ask a question that is very similar.
Okay.
Ruth says, volunteer musicians have served faithfully. Can they still be a part of the music ministry? And Margaret words it this way: will you work with the wonderful people we already have in place of music?
Yeah, of course. So again, my heart isn't to put on a great show. It's actually to equip the saints to do the work that God's called you to do. So as a pastor, I don't think we ever throw people away. We don't say, hey, you're not good enough. Because that's kind of what the question is, like, are these people
Yes,
good enough based
good
on
insight on
your
that.
experience, or based on what you think it could be or should be? That's not the goal. That's the goal, is to equip people. So I intentionally say, how do we grow? Um, and as you get to know me, if this is, if we believe this is what God has for both of our families, you'll understand that I'm an evaluative personality. I say, hey, is this working really well? Are we satisfied with results? Then if not, let's change it. But I'm not going to work harder than you. You have to come up with a plan to grow and change. So I put a lot of ownership back on people. So some people say, well, I can't do that, or I won't do that. And therefore they pull themselves out. Um, so that's one thing I would say, that the onus is on people. If we agree upon a vision and a picture together, and you're 7 steps behind and you're resistant to have a plan to move forward, then that's actually on you.
Yeah.
My role is to equip.
Right.
But ultimately, here's what I want to say. The music's a reflection of leadership. It's not. So it's like, what do we believe God's picture and dream is? So I would say, when the board said there's lacking leadership, I would also say that there's lacking a picture of what it is. So there are going to be some people on the worship team who have a very different picture of what they think it should be. And part of being in community is dying to your pictures of what you want to serve for other people. And so that would be one of the things I would call people to. So again, music isn't self-expression in church, although there's this kind of weird joy that happens.
Sure.
So yes, they're beautiful people. Yes, Kevin was like, what a great human being, and a gifted artist to step in and just support back.
I love the way they work together on that.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment. We felt honored, because I value people so deeply. I'm not like, hey, here's an A and here's a B and you don't measure up. A lot of people think that. So here's what I would also say. If you're an artist and a musician and that is your concern, you're going to get cast aside, then we have to do some core identity work, because your value and worth doesn't come from strumming a guitar. It doesn't come from singing a song. And that's the
Yeah.
tension I see in a lot of churches.
Oh, yeah.
People are fighting to express and to have identity based on what they do, not who they are held by in Jesus. So what I would say though is that, are we really, really satisfied? Do we believe that this is God's best, or is there a need for new voices to come in and make change? I would challenge those kind of things.
Sure. And I appreciate you sharing that. And you have such a strongly developed background
Great.
in the area of music arts, in production, in online technology. I mean, that has been your home base for so many years,
Right.
kind of developing that part of it. But what I appreciate, I hear you saying, is that you've also spent a lot of time developing your values and your purpose behind it, that it's not just the production, but it's the production shaped within this context of, what is God wanting to do within us through it? So I that's something I value so much about what you bring is,
thank you.
That's awesome.
The fact that you could articulate and reframe that means you're a very smart man. Yeah.
I must be wise. It's all the gray hair that's made me wise finally.
Great.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your responses. We're still getting to some of the questions. We've been having 15 to 20 people online with us, coming in and out and listening to parts of this. And of course, we're saving this, where you can come back and listen to this if you want to, or if somebody has missed this, you can tell them it's on our Simcoe site. It's in our Simcoe. So I can't even speak. It's Saturday morning. It's in our Simcoe side group, Facebook group. You can direct them to it and they can pick this up later. And in time to vote by tomorrow night at 7:00. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Vanda, thank you so much for your questions and for engaging with us. She asks this question. She actually asked it quite a bit earlier, but I'm just coming to it now. What spiritual goals do you have? And that's a much more personal question.
Personal spiritual goal, or is that goals within the church?
It doesn't really say, but by the way it's worded, I think it's personal for you.
Great. So I'm a strong believer that I can't take people past where I'm willing to go. So I use words like leading from the inside out, like intimacy. So John 15, abiding, remaining in the vine. It's really, really integral for me. So one of my personal goals spiritually is to fall deeper in love with Jesus. And I say that because that's where you become who God's intended you to be.
Yeah.
I want to grow in the Word. It's a passion of mine. It's a desire. I actually may have tear up here because I love the wisdom and the application that comes from Bible, the scriptures. I want to grow in that. I like to learn. I'm a learner, and so that would be part of my. So for me, learning is also a spiritual goal. It's I want to continue to grow and develop myself so that I can continue to grow and develop others.
Right.
Spiritual goals. That was a question, right? What other?
Yeah.
What other spiritual goals do you have as a person? There's a rhythm from the churches that I've worked at where it is a job. It doesn't give you a lot of space to find your rhythms. And I think God creates all of us with rhythms in this world. And I'm at this place where I want to change my rhythms. And I believe God's asking me to change my rhythms. which is to be more in community with people. And that to me is very spiritual. And it's a place that I need to grow and develop. Even though I can taste it, it's there. It's like, oh, wow, I do it in everything. But to be that intentional, to find spiritual rhythms, to be in community with people, oh my goodness, that would bring us life. Those are worth tears for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And,
yeah.
and I hear that deep passion in you. And some of that maybe comes from, sometimes we don't even get there till after years of ministry.
Yeah.
And we wrestle with there's what I'm doing on the outside.
Yeah.
But where's my heart and what's happening on the inside?
Mhm.
And I hear that. And that sometimes only comes through experiences, sometimes I'm sure hard experiences that have brought you to some of
Yeah.
those places.
Yeah.
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 Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We have some more questions here, and Dee, thank you, Dee, for your question.
Okay.
We're coming back to the area of children's ministry.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on getting the children's ministry back on track?
Right. So I'm a practical meat and potato kind of guy. Do we have children? Are there children a part of, so like you don't create ministry and build it like Field of Dreams and people will come to it, because there's so much to do in a season where we've come through COVID and we're finding new ground. What's it mean to live online and in person? Like there's lots to do. So you have to prioritize. So that's sort of my my disclaimer to say, are there children and do we need a children's ministry at this season of life? Just because we've had it forever, do we need it now? So that'd be more of an assessment. And that's a leadership question. That's part of the board to say, hey, what do we believe we need to focus on moving forward? The first 6 months, the first year. I think the focus would probably not be on that from what I've seen. I didn't see a lot of young families with young kids, but I don't know.
Right. Right.
If that's fair.
Yeah. So let's just play the what if game.
Right.
And so what if we're in a situation, we see some younger families with kids and they say, we like this church, but our kids need something.
Right. Of course.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. So there are a lot of fantastic curriculums out there, and I won't name them, but there are lots of great curriculum that have tracking. So here's what it looks like in year 1. Here's what it might look like in year 7. What will teach the kid, the student or child in an arc. But the problem with that is it has to be for my personal preference. You have to be in alignment with the arc of the church. So you're not having 2 little mini churches.
Like silos.
That's right, silos.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
So serving parents is a priority to grow a church. I just believe it is, because serving the kids. So there will come a time when we have to say resources need to go here. So resources might need to go because we only have limited resource.
Yes.
We may have to reallocate resource from over here to children's ministry. And we'll know together, the leadership will know, they've had some good, these are priorities, Rob. These are what we see. And I've asked all the way through, what are the priorities?
Yes, you have. Yes. Yeah.
They've said, we think these are priorities. That question has come up a few times about students and kids. And I gave the same answer, which is, if I had to choose between 2 based on limited resource, I would choose children when it's time to, launch it as a priority.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's something that we're not creative enough. We don't actually think outside of our building context. Like we've got a school right next door.
Yeah.
Physically. So what would stop us from partnering with what already exists? And I think that's where we're narrow-minded in church. Everything has to be built in-house. It already exists.
Yeah.
So maybe we're to partner somehow, share resource. Not everybody's that courageous and not everybody is that generous. We all say we are in church, but we're not.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I think that, yeah, it's a priority.
Yeah.
It is when it's a priority.
Yeah. And what I love hearing you say is the collaborative work, that when it's time, you
Sure.
work with the leadership, you work with the volunteers to
Mhm.
develop something, and not, and I don't hear you say you're coming in with a canned approach. This is, but
Right.
I see that openness to be able to develop with who's
Right.
here, where we should go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I also, maybe I shouldn't jump in too quickly. Um, our approach to education is one tracked. So it's always passing on information. So
Yeah.
older approaches to children's ministry, you would know this,
Yep.
discipleship wasn't holistic, wasn't experiential, was here's your information.
Yes.
And we expected that that one learning teaching style would develop people. So I
Yeah.
would also say, I would also challenge, especially people who've worked in one style of ministry. I would challenge and say, hey, there is much more to education. Smart universities, smart um, people are saying, hey, we're not actually educating with great results anymore.
Yes. And that's so true both with children, but with youth and adults as well, that
Oh,
it's not just information that transforms a life.
right.
Yeah, like information is valuable and very important and we have to do it, but
Yeah.
it has to be deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
let's take a look. Folks, we're getting close to the end of our time. So if you have some questions, get it in. Someone asked whether this will be posted on YouTube as well. Possibly. I need outside help from James and Joe to see if we can post it there. But it's here on Facebook for sure. Uh, okay. Coming back to the worship, the music team's question. Cindy has a question, and we've talked about this
That's gotten,
a fair amount. And I think you guys met Cindy.
yes.
Cindy wants to know if Rob and Beck plan on leading worship teams.
Hmm. So definitely Beck, for sure has. So my journey has been moving out of leading. So I've led every now and then I get to lead,
Yeah.
but it's usually out of desperation, just filling in the gap.
Yes.
It is actually really incredibly difficult, I find, to be someone who regularly leads and manages the whole.
Mhm.
So I've seen multiple pastors, worship leaders try to pastor and shepherd a church and lead worship. And one or the other really suffers.
Mm.
So musically it might suffer or the leadership suffers. So I have chosen all the way along. And because I'm creative and entrepreneurial, I reinvented sort of the gifts. So, made the leap from worship pastor
Yes.
to creative, director, worship and creative arts, which is more of a larger role. So I would pastor the worship pastors. That was my role.
Yeah, it
And
was
that's
your
what
role.
happened in most of the churches that I'd served at. So
Yes.
I don't lead anymore. It's not part of my DNA, except for, so we think worship leading is music. I
Yes.
lead, God has gifted me to lead worship and create services and produce experiences and moments where music might be a small part of it,
Yes.
but it takes people on an emotional journey and a theological journey.
Yes.
So I do lead worship, just not with a guitar anymore.
Right.
And yes, Beck is, that's part of her gifting. We all saw that in
Mm.
the body of Christ.
Yes.
Um, but she is also uh, a pastor shepherd in her own right.
Yeah.
So she is also,
Yeah.
a leader. She would give leadership, but we've already talked through,
Yes.
this is part of our process. that
That's right.
I am clearly the leader because it's part of my gifting and call to shape, to build,
Yeah.
create system and structure. In many ways, she gives permission to other artists to, raise their game, but also to go deeper with
Yeah.
Jesus. So
Thank you. And I think like I was able to see that on the Sunday that you guys were physically here,
great.
that Beck was not just about getting up and singing,
Right.
but
Right.
the way she worked with Kevin, the way the two of them worked together, and how she shared her heart with us, that was much deeper than
Yeah.
just, I'm going to sing you a
Yeah.
nice song.
Yeah.
It was something deeper and very pastoral,
Right.
and sharing of herself, and which I see with both of you guys, that
Yeah.
even though you are in your own right a gifted musician, you understand worship as, and we sometimes struggle with, how do we describe what we're doing? Like, is this a music team? Is it a praise team? Is it a worship team? What is it? But I know that's something I expect that you have wrestled with yourself over the years.
Yeah.
How do we think about what we're doing? How do we do it intentionally?
Yeah.
What is what we're doing? But, and I know we've already talked about this, that, you've talked about working with the volunteers. You've talked about all that stuff. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And we are pretty much out of questions. A lot of people have been saying, Rob, thank you for your responses and sharing your heart with us.
You're welcome.
And I see in you, not only are you giving quick answers, but you're giving well thought out things that tell me that you've wrestled with this stuff, because you've been in, we call it professional ministry, it means,
Okay.
vocational ministry, whatever. You've been doing that for what? How many years have you been doing this?
I
20?
don't know.
I don't know. It's,
I'm looking old.
yeah, well, you know
No,
what they
I'm
say,
not.
it's,
So old. I guess it's almost 20 years.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
what's that? Oh, my wife, 23. She just walked
20.
around.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So there you go.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
For sure.
but the years in it, yeah, like, you can't do the years without wrestling with the deeper issues.
Sure. Yes.
Wrestling with your heart, wrestling with how you show up, wrestling with,
Yeah.
what is God saying, and how, like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that people understand the value of being in it a long time, is that you've got to wrestle with things that are deeper than just, I'm up on stage playing my guitar, singing great songs.
Mhm.
It's
Sure.
far deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's character, right? You have to
Yeah.
really work through character.
Yeah.
So great worshipers and great worship leaders are all people of character. They've had to lay down their instrument at some point. Anyway, I don't want to
Sure.
go.
We can go. And
Sure.
we spent a
Oh.
lot of time on that already. And I know, because it's big in people's minds, that's
Yeah.
why those questions keep
Yeah,
coming up.
sure. Absolutely.
Elaine has, this is, we'll take Elaine's question. And if there's one more, we'll take that.
Sure.
And otherwise, we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm good.
Elaine says, what would you like us to know most about you?
Oh, that's the vulnerable question.
Yes.
Yeah, I have. I'm confident. I'm confident because I've had some deep wounds and God has restored me and healed me. My thought is gone. So where was I going with it?
Yeah, I'll just reframe the question if you need.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
So confidence sometimes communicates to people that you steamroll people, which is not the case in my personality. I am confident, but yet at the same time, I'm incredibly humble and want to serve people. So
Mm.
don't mistake my confidence for, I don't care about your opinion. I deeply care about people's opinions and to journey with them. But I also believe that God's called certain people to lead in certain ways.
Mm.
So here's what I would say. Was it Elaine you said?
Yes, that was Elaine's question.
Okay. So I would say to Elaine that I will make mistakes. I will let people down because I am a human being. My promise, and I do this in my household, I do this with anyone I serve alongside, I will own and in humility ask for forgiveness and not hold offense and move forward. And I just ask the same of people that I serve
Mm.
alongside. It's that's yeah, that's pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And you know, from what Renee and I know of you and Beck, I think that's something you live out in your life. And you do appear very confident and that, but I also sense
You
that
wait till you see
openness.
me tomorrow.
Pardon?
You wait till you see me preaching to an empty screen. Sorry, anyway.
Yeah, and preaching online is so much different than preaching in person, isn't it? Yeah, but what we know of you is that you have, while you're very intentional and you're aiming at something, and that makes you appear very confident, you have a very soft side. You listen and you evaluate things so much down deeply that makes you, you know, it makes you a very deep person.
Thank you.
And that's something that we've come to value about you.
Yeah, that's
So
kind.
thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So Vanda says, do you play musical instruments?
Boys.
Oh, do your boys? Sorry, I didn't read that right. Do your boys play?
My boys play. Yeah. So Lincoln's a drummer, guitarist. So Lincoln's the one that's gravitated more to the
Yeah.
instrument, and he sings as well. And Jet's a singer too. So
Okay.
yeah, we're musical for sure.
Nice. I mean, you got musical parents that kind of sometimes passes on.
Right? Sure.
Sometimes, but okay. So we are out of time here.
Okay.
We've had, you know, around 20 or so-ish people join us for this coffee with Rob. My coffee's cold by now. 25 online now. Okay.
That's great. Okay.
That's good to hear. And just want to remind everyone, here's our commercial. Rob is the one that our leadership team has evaluated and done deep conversations with, and they are recommending that we call Rob and Beck and their family to come to Aurelia to lead Simcoe Side Church. And while they are recommending this, we need your vote, and you can vote at and email your vote in at leadershipteam@simcoeside.com, or you can phone into the church and leave a message on voicemail for your vote. You need to vote before 7 p.m. tomorrow. Some of you say, I know now, I'm going to vote now. That's fine. Or you say, I want to wait till tomorrow afternoon after we've heard Rob preach. Rob has recorded a sermon for us, and we're going to be presenting that in our service tomorrow. It's hard preaching, you know, somewhere else and preaching to a group of people you can't see with your eyes.
Great.
So Rob's going to be doing that in our service tomorrow, and we're calling on our congregation to give us a vote of affirmation. Should we call Rob or not? And so it's a simple yes or no question. And so that's what we're calling for. Thank you for being with us this morning, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for participating and helping us do it long distance. This is something new for all of us. It's challenging to get to know somebody new who's at a distance. Thank you so much, Rob. We want to leave you with any last words that you'd like to share with those who are with us.
Well, I just want to say thanks, Jerry, to you, Renee, your leadership. You know, you've been hospitable, answered questions. We've asked of certain things through this process. This hasn't just been, you know, us following your protocol. You've done some adjustments for us. So it just shows flexibility. So thanks. Appreciate it.
God bless you. Thank you everyone for participating. Tomorrow morning, Rob will be preaching on Simcoe Side Live. And there again, leadership team at simcoeside.com is your email address to use for voting and any other questions or concerns you might have for our board of elders, our leadership team. That's where you can go. Thank you for joining us, and God bless all of you. Bye now.